Good morning, everyone, and very much welcome to another Flash Friday. We're very much looking forward to taking you all through the news today, and of course, give you some inspiration for heading into the weekend. As always, I'd like to do that with a special guest, and today I've got Walter Heck. He's the CTO of HeleCloud, so very much welcome, Walter. Very much looking forward to our discussion today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, great to have you here. Of course, there's also quite some cloud news this week. So I think we've got the right person on the job here to really take us through a bit and see how the world around cloud computing, which is basically one of the key elements now these days in actually getting your tech stack in order, how we can basically look at the developments there. So very much looking forward to that. And of course, I'd like to encourage everyone to ask questions in the chat if you have any along the way. I might ignore them if we're on a roll, but I'll try to weave them into the story if it's possible. And in any case, looking forward to this fun discussion. But first of all, Walter, not everyone might be familiar with HeleCloud. Could you tell us a little bit about what you guys?
Yes, HeleCloud, we are an AWS consultancy based in here in the Netherlands and in the UK. You might know it previously. I ran a company called Holland Data, and that got acquired last year in 2019 August to become HeleCloud Netherlands. So over the last year, we've been rebranding from Holland Data to HeleCloud, but it's the same team, just part of a larger organization now. And HeleCloud, we provide AWS consultancy, so we help customers, small and large, with their AWS projects. And specifically for fintech, we hold the fintech competency badge from AWS. So we have displayed specific knowledge and reference cases on fintech in the fintech industry to make sure that we know how to deal with the specifics.
So what does that entail? Does it mean that you have to uphold certain standards or certain security measures, or is it indeed just a proven track record?
It's mostly a proven track record. So they want to know that you know how to deal with fintech companies, and then because we have customers in both in the Netherlands as well as pan-European, we deal with a lot of the security and the frameworks that are required by national banks or payment industry. Those kind of things are fairly common for us, but they're complex matter to deal properly with. So we've displayed our knowledge in that and are recognized by AWS for it.
Okay, yeah, I think that's really nice. And I think, do you see a lot of? I think also cloud computing has been a bit of a troublesome for the financial industry for quite a while, as it all seemed like on-premise was the only way to go. And I think now we've seen a big shift over the past years. Do you still see that trend moving forward with more companies, also traditional companies, going into the cloud?
Yeah, I see it. We see it all across the board. Even the traditional banks, to keep it specific to the Netherlands, the big banks, they are moving non-core banking parts to the cloud. Of course, the real core banking stuff stays in data centers. But I see a big shift still happening, and I think that hopefully soon we'll see more large cloud providers have regions in the Netherlands, which will accelerate that shift considerably. Because right now, if you want to choose, for instance, AWS, and you have financial data that is from a regulatory perspective has to stay in the Netherlands, you're facing some challenges. So.
Yeah, because not all of them have their base yet, right? So what are the bigger gaps there, you think?
Well, so for instance, one of the things that's actually quite nice that not that many people know about is that AWS has two separate legal entities for the EU and for North America. So they're actually separate companies. And from that perspective, if you put your data in, for instance, Frankfurt, then you're covered by the legal requirements that Germany puts on data residency, and that's quite strong. It's stronger than what we have here in the Netherlands.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I think that's so that would probably help well in the discussions you are having with these companies to actually do that onboarding. And so, which countries are you active in Europe with HeleCloud together?
So HeleCloud is founded in the UK. So we have a team in the UK and a team in the Netherlands. The team in the Netherlands services the Benelux area, and then we have a nearshore technology hub in Bulgaria, and that's simply because our founder is originally Bulgarian. He's been living in the UK for 20 years, but originally Bulgarian, so it made sense to have a technology hub there.
Yeah, it always helps if you do some offshoring of work that you have a good connection with the culture locally and know your way around. Indeed, yeah. And so, what are sort of, let's say, your bigger challenges at the moment? So, if you look at sort of development of HeleCloud, what are you looking forward to or up against if you're talking about sort of the next step that you have to face?
Well, I think as for everyone, this has been a very challenging year to make a business adapt in an agile fashion to the rapidly changing business environment. Like, it's been pretty crazy. And as a consultancy, in what we saw that in basically in Q2, like in March, we had the lockdown. So in Q2, all companies kind of hit the emergency brakes on spending and all said, "Oh, we need to figure out first what we're going to do about this whole COVID situation before we do spending." So Q2 was relatively low, but then Q3 and Q4 are actually record months for us. Like last month was by far the largest month we've ever had in the company, and it's simply because now you see that companies have thought about what to do. And the almost universal outcome is we need to accelerate this cloud adoption journey. And we happen to be playing in that field. So that's been really good for us. And I think that's also where probably into next year we'll see a lot of the activity, simply because I don't know. I don't want to be pessimistic or optimistic, but I prefer realistic, and I don't see a vaccine happening before the summer. So I think that at least for the next 6 months, we'll be mostly working from home, and that just has an impact on lots of different businesses. And I think that there's a shift of where spending happens in the economy, and that means that some businesses will all of a sudden thrive, and some businesses will really struggle, and that's That's going to be a thing for the next.
Do you have any challenges, for example, in finding now the right people to actually deal with all this additional business in this period, or is it easy to get people on board and scale basically with the demand?
It's never easy. People is always the hardest part of the equation. So that's it's definitely not super easy. But as a pure play AWS partner that was founded so we were founded in 2016 by our CEO Dobromir Todorov, and he came from AWS. So he was a manager at AWS. He was one of the first 5 employees at AWS EMEA. And because of this, we were born as an AWS partner. So if you want to be in infrastructure and you want to focus on big AWS challenges as an infrastructure engineer, HeleCloud is one of the best places to be, because we do nothing else and we don't have any legacy. So as a consultant, it's compelling because you get to see a number of different larger projects in a year. There are not that many providers in the Netherlands that can offer that kind of service. Yeah, no,
well, that sounds like a pretty good position. And so what I'm curious about as well, I briefly asked you this also in advance, is a lot of companies work in the cloud, but they work with, for example, SaaS solutions, right? So they don't necessarily work with their company completely in the cloud. How do you see basically the difference between these different worlds? And do you see also sort of a natural transition from parties to actually start working completely on an Amazon cloud, for example, after when they reach a certain size?
Yeah. So what I usually see is, and I'll briefly dig into the difference between mostly infrastructure as a service and software as a service. So AWS, Amazon Web Services, provides infrastructure as a service, and so basically it's the cloud version of VMware and those kind of really infrastructure layers. So what AWS gives you if you open up an AWS account, I always compare it to a big box of Legos. So they give you a big box of Legos, turn it over on your desk, and say, now you can build any infrastructure you want at your demand, and it's really great. But now you need all the skills to do that, and now you need the software to run on top of it. So this is absolutely critical for a large part of the business. So in the fintech space, we see a lot of companies that are actually providing a service. They're actually SaaS providers, and that SaaS software needs to run somewhere. And that infrastructure can then be AWS or Google Cloud or one of the other cloud providers. And then on the other side, you see many companies using either Office 365 or the Google Suite for the day-to-day work for the employees that are not the IT people. So across the business, everybody will have a Google account that's used for email. And at the moment, the two big players there are Google and Microsoft. Yeah.
And so, but let's say if I look at that, so basically you got the software that includes hosting, right? So that's the SaaS solution that includes the infrastructure, or you would basically start from the infrastructure upwards, where you would go from, for example, AWS. But I would also, what I see as well is that increasingly also the software stack is becoming available through these channels, right? So I think AWS is also basically allowing you to work with software providers as well to build on top of their infrastructure.
Yeah. So what you see is that if we look at something that's a little bit more in the IT space, something like logs. So let's say you build an application or an infrastructure and it has lots of logs. You can choose to store it directly on Amazon in your own environment, which means that you keep control of the data, which is both an advantage as well as a disadvantage, because keeping control of the data means that you're also responsible for managing it. And this is one of the reasons why people choose software as a service, because then you just ship your logs to I don't know, Sumo Logic or some other provider, and from that moment on, you don't have to care about the life cycle of those logs, the storage, all of those things, and also retrieval and querying of those logs. So companies like Datadog, Sumo Logic, their expertise is in that specific field of visualizing and making your logs usable. So while you can store it in your own AWS account, you keep your own control over it. It's great if you have your own engineering capacity to actually deal with that, because there are really good solutions available for that as well. If this is not your core business, then you might want to think about software as a service. So you would just pay someone else to worry about it.
Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly. Well, cool. I think there's quite a lot going on in the cloud space. I think if we look at the news that we saw this week, there was quite some interesting stuff going on, right? So, for example, we saw that Amazon is investing a lot in India for another data center. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. So India is. As a bit of background, previously as Holland Data, we used to run a company in India. So we provided consultancy to Indian IT companies instead of the other way around. Most people get consultancy from them. We were providing it to them. So I have a lot of experience in India, and it's really one of those things that you have to see with your own eyes. One of the first times I went to India, I picked up a newspaper, and a front page of the newspaper, it said, by 2025, India will have 500 million trained engineers. And that number is just so staggering. It's larger than the entire capacity of the entire population of the European Union.
Exactly.
So while a lot of things are behind on a technical journey in India, it's rapidly catching up, and the evidence that Amazon is opening a second region, not a first region, but a second region, is not to be discarded. What we saw a lot when we did business there is that a lot of Western companies have outsourced stuff to India, either directly by, let's say, an HP has an office there, Intel has offices there, but at the same time, you see those really large consulting companies are there as well. And so secretly, I see India as a big part of the engine of worldwide IT, because they simply have volume at low cost. Which
I think they play an important role, and I see it's also interesting that they they actually also begin to do acquisitions and grow further into European and US markets, where they really want to get more control instead of just being the cheap hands to build things. They really want to be much more in the game of the business, right?
And it's also required. I mean, I see a large shift in the Western IT companies that they're moving away from the traditional outsourcing as cheap as possible model, and things like DevOps and infrastructure as code. Those kind of newer technologies in cloud, they require a certain level of skill from whoever you work with, and so they're also requiring this from the outsourcing companies, and that's quite an interesting shift. And what you say is totally true. They're building up skills and capital to move out of outside of India as well. You see the same thing for Alibaba in China. One of the news that you sent me was Alibaba took over IBM as a cloud provider, and this is quite interesting actually, because IBM, while you don't hear that much about it, secretly there's quite a few mostly traditional companies that work with IBM, and from a technical perspective, IBM is not great. I don't ever hear anyone go, "Wow, I'm super happy that we're on IBM Cloud," but that might be because I live in the AWS bubble, so maybe I'm wrong, but.
Yeah, it could be. I think, but it's the same as I think you have this saying that would actually is used for a lot of companies, that like you won't get fired for hiring IBM is I think something, right? It feels like you're not really taking a risk. I think that goes. I mean, I think this saying is used in different contexts with different company names, but in general, I think it's something that is still regarded as a really stable solution potentially.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely interesting. It shows at least how big the power shift is changing, and how China is really becoming a force to reckon with. So you could argue that this is a really sort of a signal about how large the economy is going to be from that perspective. Yeah.
I mean, it's simple statistics, right? So if you look at India and China's population combined, it's roughly half the world's population lives in those two countries alone. So to discard those economies just because they're still catching up seems like a bad bet.
Yeah. No, exactly. But I think especially if you've also done business in India, I think it's why do you believe it's so hard for us to connect to these cultures, perhaps, or to sort of really understand it? Because I think we're so United States oriented, I think, from a European perspective, which has part to do with the media, right? I mean, we get infected with US culture continuously. But so I think it's really interesting to explore how to actually make it easier for people to get a grip on the developments there.
Yeah, I think unfortunately it's a long game. So I did a lot of things in India. We had some very excellent people working for us there. One of the issues that exist in India that isn't necessarily a problem for India. It's not a problem for Europe. It's a problem when you want to interface these cultures. Is that so? Especially in the Netherlands. The Netherlands is crazy well known for this. If I have a problem with my boss, I'll just tell him, "Hey, I think what you're saying is bullshit. And then, he'll he'll maybe not like me, but he'll accept it, and he'll take it for what it is. And if I have a point, then I have a point, and he'll listen.
Yep.
In not just India, but in much of Asia, that power dynamic is very different, and it starts with education as children in school. It has nothing to do with IT or tech specifically, where very often the culture is that if you're superior, whatever kind of power dynamic you're talking about, so it's in the classroom as well. If the teacher says something, then the teacher is right. You don't go and counter whatever they're saying, and that makes it really difficult to interface between a culture that's like that and a culture like ours. And,
no, I can imagine
that's a challenge.
No, I fully agree, and I think it's but it's worthwhile to keep on exploring, I think, because indeed it's definitely a force to reckon with, for sure.
It can be done. It can be done successfully, and but I think that if we're talking Netherlands specific, we also need to be open a little bit more for the fact that some people just have a different perspective on the world, and if we keep trying to force them into our perspective, it's going to lead to disappointment. And instead, try to meet halfway and take it from there. That's a much better strategy.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. And so also, I think one of the things that I see very often mentioned as well is that sort of the global power of AI investments, right? So who's going to be the biggest super force in AI, which I still always find a very silly question. But what are your thoughts about the developments in AI? I think we saw this week that let's say it's an opinion piece about how AI is used in financial services. What's your view there?
I think so. I read the article, and I summarized my comments in 3 words. AI is overrated. That was really my comment. And my sister happens to be teaching computer science, software engineering in Fontis in Eindhoven, and with a focus on data science. And really, data science is a much better word. I almost automatically discard anyone who talks about AI because really we're not at any kind of AI level. We're at a data science level where you can take a large amount of data, take one of the machine learning algorithms, and then make that predict an outcome. But it's machine learning and data science, and it's not AI. And anyone who talks about AI it's kind of a buzzword at the moment. If you expect it to be some kind of sentient thing that just automatically learns by itself, that's just simply not where we're at. You need a lot of source data that is accurate in order to get to accurate predictions. On unknown.
I think it's a really tough thing, because indeed it sort of sparks our imagination to a large extent, especially by also powered by a lot of sci-fi movies and ideas that we start to think about artificial intelligence as in self-thinking and handling robots, for example, that become human-like almost. And indeed, we're so far away still. If you look at the applications in the financial industry, at least, but I think in general, it's indeed much more like advanced statistics or data analytics rather than self-thinking algorithms that could take over the world, so to say. But it makes the discussion pretty hard, because the sentiment around it is also evolving like that, right? So you have some people that really believe that we should, that they really believe that we should work towards these self-thinking, self-handling robots, or people that really fear that situation as well, and already start, for example, making the rules for data analytics look after those kind of fears.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? I think it's inevitable that we will end up there. I'm personally a believer of the way Elon Musk sees this situation, is that given enough time, we will automatically end up with eventually a sentient AI that will then eventually end up deciding that humans are kind of a suboptimal thing and start a simulation. And from that, it leads to the conclusion that we might already be in a simulation. organization, which is really futuristic thinking, and it doesn't really help us today or in the next decade or in the next century. But that's it's an interesting exercise, and I think that's to bring it back to reality. Over the next decade or so, we won't see any kind of sentient AI, and we'll just be improving on data science things.
Yeah.
And that is not to say that that is not going great. If you look at Amazon specific, because I happen to have the contextual knowledge there, some of the things that Amazon is able to do. If you look at very simple things like the spoken text from the devices that they have, and it's available as a separate service in Amazon as well. It's really approaching natural spoken language. It's no longer annoying to listen to. And that's quite a feat already, and that is definitely done using machine learning algorithms. So
yeah,
it's interesting.
No, definitely. So I think it's still pretty cool what can be done, but indeed we need to be quite sober about how close it is to home actually, and what steps we can take from there. Yeah. So. What I'm curious about also is that, let's say you mentioned your headquarters is based in London, right? So
correct.
We've got Brexit coming up. Can be quite a challenge for financial services companies. You see all kinds of companies now popping up, getting licenses from Ireland, Lithuania, Germany, Luxembourg, the Netherlands. And so that you see that basically some UK companies are all at least making contingency plans. What do you see developing on your end from that perspective?
That's interesting. It's hard to say, because what I have seen so far is that there's a lot of threatening. It's like a children's playground at school, only at a geopolitical level.
Yeah.
There's a lot of threatening, like I will do this if you don't do that, and then in the end, they both back down because neither the EU nor the UK has anything to gain from a no-deal Brexit. It's going to be super annoying for all people involved, and ultimately, I think that money is what makes the world go around, and there is just simply too much at stake to let this go to a no-deal Brexit. That's not to say that it cannot absolutely not happen, but I feel that we're looking at who can shout the loudest, and then eventually they'll meet in the middle somewhere, as long as they can tell they're people that they've tried and they've negotiated. The reality, however, is that it's still a business risk at the moment, and we already see tenders, for instance, where requirements are that all of the services will be delivered by EU resources over the next 6 years, and that just simply means that we need to think about that as a company, and we are not the only ones. This is as you say, many companies are making contingency plans. It's too early to move, but there's definitely a risk, and it's good to cover that risk.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I think it's quite challenging. Just maybe I think we're almost out of our time here. So just want to check in. One thing is that let's say if you work in financial services, what are the things you like the most about the fintech developments? I saw, for example, this week we had the Swiss government make an initiative on sustainable finance. Do you also look into these kind of projects, for example? And what are your thoughts about that?
One of the things that you sent me that I really liked, at first the title reads like massive clickbait. Experian lets Brits use Netflix subscriptions to boost credit scores. And like, wait, what? But then when you look into it, it's actually quite interesting. So what Experian did is say, okay, if you can prove to us that you've been paying your Netflix subscription, that means that you are worthy, that you have a good payment history. So if we can prove that without you having to prove it, but if we can let Netflix prove this, then it's not a 100% guarantee that you'll pay your mortgage, but it is it's an indication that it becomes a kind of a trust factor.
Yep.
And it's both relatively scary because now all of a sudden a financial institution has insight into your Netflix payments, which can have all kinds of other unforeseen consequences. But at the same time, it's quite nice to see those kind of newer ways of approaching problems because, I used to have a company of my own, and now I'm employed by HeleCloud. But as an entrepreneur in the Netherlands, trying to get a mortgage is a complete disaster for no reason. You can be employed for 20 years, get a mortgage. The day after you get the mortgage approved, you can start your own company. Nobody will ask a question. But if you start the company a week before you apply for the mortgage, then the whole world is a giant nightmare.
Yeah.
And these kind of initiatives, to me, are good.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think it's really interesting to look differently at the way that you build credit scores. And I also fully agree on the experience of being an entrepreneur and trying to get a mortgage. It doesn't make any sense. But so basically, if the employees of the entrepreneur can easier get a mortgage while you actually run the same risk, it's kind of funny, right? So
I never understood it. I mean, it makes sense from a historical perspective, but that world has changed so massively that it's time for those financial institutions to also see that. And
I think it's more on a policy level. I think where the let's say the NIBUD is, for example, the Dutch Budgeting Institute that actually prescribes the way that these things work to a large extent. So there's some work to do there. But I think we already have to wrap it up, Walter. I think we're already past our time.
Yeah.
I saw one question coming up from Jasper, who wanted to get a bit more insights about sort of the benefits of moving into the cloud. It might be good to stick around just a little bit to maybe check in with him whether we can make a connection and talk to him about it. But for the rest, for now, I'd really like to thank you, Walter. I thought it was a really nice conversation about everything going on in the world of cloud and fintech. Hope you enjoyed it.
Yep. Definitely.
Yeah, very nice. And so for everyone who was tuning in, thank you very much for joining in. I hope you find it informative and a good way to start your last day before the weekend. Have a great day today. Enjoy your weekend and looking forward to see you again next week. Cheers.